Hello and welcome to the CX Catalyst. Today I'm joined by Joe Leopold, CX Manager at Pinion. Joe, welcome to the CX Catalyst. I'm
Thank
delighted to
you.
have you on. Yeah,
Thank you for having me, Stephen. I
yeah,
appreciate it, sir.
yeah, it's a pleasure. Before we talk about CX more broadly, perhaps you could introduce yourself, your role, and a little bit about Pinion as well.
Sure. So I'm the CX manager at Pinion. I'm the only dedicated CX personnel at the firm. And Pinion is a global CPA, tax, audit, accounting, all of those things firm. But we also offer a broad menu of services around advisory and consultative niche expertise areas. Our typical clients, we were founded in agriculture 100 years ago. That's still how we're known. But since then, our clients range from private estates to food and beverage manufacturing, heavy equipment, biofuels, telecoms. We're all over the place now, but we're known for the ag space primarily.
Got it. That's great background. Thank you. To dive into it, what was happening in the business, Joe, that made customer experience impossible to ignore? And what was it that finally demanded attention?
So, over the last decade, Pinion has gone through a pretty massive transformation. We rebranded from Kennedy and Co. to Pinion. Obviously, that was a heavily involved situation there. But on top of that, over the last few years, we have transformed into a heavier digital experience for our clients on top of becoming a global operating entity. So there's a lot going on there in a decade. So I think due to some savvy leadership, some proactive future thinking leadership, our marketing principal, Jen Hurd, recognized that CX needed to be involved in order for these initiatives to launch appropriately. And especially when you're leaning heavier into a more digital experience and you're shaking clients a little bit with a rebrand, I think that CX was necessary for us to rehumanize that experience for the clients. It needed to work in conjunction with these things. That proactive and kind of future thinking is how formal CX came to Pinion.
Got it. And leadership having identified that there was a need because of the transformation that you were going through, identified as a strategic imperative to really help customers, clients, and
Mhm.
employees. How did they continue to support that? And how do they do that today?
I, when you're trying to undergo this transformation and insert formal CX as a pillar at your firm, you really have to go all in. And luckily, our leadership was on board with that in terms of budget expenditure and staffing, so on and so forth. Huge amount of support from leadership, a lot of buy-in from the top down. It has been really a dream.
And when you were brought in, and you have to remind me how long ago that was now, Joe,
Oh, we're going a little past 3 years now. Yeah.
3 years now, what were the first concrete steps that you took? Because obviously they've identified this need for it, but then obviously they've made this great investment bringing you in to lead that practice. So what are the steps you took and where did you start? And maybe why did you start there versus somewhere else?
Sure. So we're a team of two for a global firm, right? Trying to take this undertaking and get it off the ground and stood up. And so we initially started working with a really crack team of consultants that sort of were part of writing the book for formal CX and professional services. And shout out to Stephen Keith and CX Pilots, by the way. But we had a defined timeline. We had a 24-month non-negotiable window in order to get a large part of these initiatives stood up. So working with them allowed us to utilize and structure those things in a way that didn't allow anything to be shelved, that didn't allow anything to fall to the wayside. We had our targets set and it allowed us to operate and make these things our own and get them off the ground, these strategies on top of some continued education, mentoring, and tutorship from Ryan Sadam and his client savvy team. Shout out to Ryan. Really, for Jen and I both, and I can speak for myself personally, it was cranking that fire hydrant open and just drinking and learning as much as I possibly could. It was new territory. I think it is for a lot of individuals who are trying to bring this initiative to their firms. So it was just absorbing as much as I could, along with understanding the culture in the firm that I was the new guy at. So that was the initial, that was the launch.
And what was absorbing that, understanding the culture? What was harder than expected when you actually started to put CX in practice?
That's a good question. I think that the hardest part is for me, I can speak for me personally, was if you care, it's all self-inflicted. The being aware of the ask that I was putting on the firm, introducing new concepts, new reporting processes, whatever that is, there was a great deal of concern for me personally around gaining people's trust, especially being newer and introducing these new ideas to the firm. There was a lot of self-inflicted concern there, but I didn't want to be perceived as big brother or the hall monitor, especially when you're discussing feedback or client sentiment, survey campaigns, things like that with people who have had relationships with these clients, some for decades, right? There's a certain amount of trust and buy-in that has to happen there. That changed after a time, but initially that was the toughest part for me, was really taking the care to take care of these individuals' clients that weren't mine yet, right?
Yeah.
So
How did you set going about that? Was there a specific moment where you're like, oh, from thinking of this as a score of me and how I'm performing
mhm.
versus, oh, this is how the firm is showing up and this is how I can help improve the operations and how we go to market and the reputation, all those good things?
I think that a key element there is you have to walk the walk. It's not distributing Kool-Aid, right? You have to show up every day and live these practices and principles that you're asking others to do. The other part of it was that was key for kind of gaining that trust and gaining buy-in and gaining access to touch these different areas of the firm, was it had a lot to do with explaining the why behind the things that we're doing. We aren't just asking you to do these things. Here's how it benefits the triangle of the firm, yourself, and the client, right? Going through and walking people through those concepts, how it benefits everybody, what the intended outcomes are over a period of time, that was key for that, for sure.
You gave a shout to Ryan Sudam at Clearly Rated or Client Savvy at that time. He talks about working with the willing. Was that something you took on board as you rolled out this program?
Absolutely. You have to find your cheerleaders at the outset, right? The folks that really see the benefit right away and see the broader picture and the benefit for formal CX at a firm. And you nurture those relationships, you bring them in, you collaborate with them because you have to. Like I said, we're a team of two. So for any of these things to have any sort of success, we needed the support and collaboration of thought leaders around the firm, from functional areas, from internal operations folks, internal communications, all of those. Everybody needed to be in an agreement that this is what's best and come up with the best way to move forward. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Was there a specific, not thinking more externally now versus internally, was there a specific client moment, a project or a metric where you knew that effort was really paying off?
Yes. So what's commonly known in a lot of firms that are implementing CX is there's a CX charter, and it's the ethos for how CX is done at that specific firm. We were developing that again with thought leadership from many areas of the firm, a lot of collaboration over many months to develop this, but we decided to call it our accord. And that wasn't chosen lightly. An accord means an agreement. We understood that this all had to be an agreed upon thing from every member of the firm in what great CX looks like, what it looks like at Pinion, and how we go about that in our day to day operations. Once that was formally introduced to the firm, there's an unknown there. I don't know how this is going to land. Is everyone going to go, fooey, whatever? And the reception of that was super positive. We had people getting in touch with us to learn more, to integrate it into their specific functions, all sorts of things. That was a big turning point for me mentally, and taking a moment and going, this is going to work. What we're doing is working. and it's being received really well. So that was a big pivot point for me personally.
And was there, when you think about the client itself, was there gaps that you'd identified pretty quickly that you were able to resolve? Where were those breakdowns happening, and what sort of improvements were you able to make having identified those?
So, going back to the initial business case for it, I think that it was really obvious. It was a natural, organic next step to include this pillar. But in terms of shortcomings or gaps, I think with any professional services firm, whether you're an engineer or an architect or a CPA, more and more they're being asked to do more. There's a limited bandwidth for that expertise. And what happens is organically, you get stuck in your busy season, you're stuck with projects. And what tends to take a sidecar is the human elements, right? The expectation setting, the communication preferences of a client, the value perception of a client. And we've really branded ourselves intentionally as a premium brand that was done with intention. And if you ever owned a BMW or Mercedes or Audi or any of those vehicles and you go to the service department there's a certain expectation. You want the muffins, you want the loaner car, you want the coffee, you want the smiles and the welcome greeting, right? And we were no different. And I think that branding ourselves in this way and knowing that we are now establishing ourselves as this kind of firm, no longer was it okay to just turn in a timely tax project or audit project. There's an experience element that clients were wanting from us as well. And that helped inform the decision also. Yeah.
And what are the results of this been? Obviously, you're showing up differently across the board as a company because your interactions with multifaceted. It's not just always with one person, it's a whole department, a whole firm.
Yes.
Where have you seen, is it, when you think about the impact, is it growth? Is it profitability? You've kept more customers, you've built more trust, so there's expansion opportunities because they're more aware of the different services that you're offering.
Mhm.
How is that showing up for Pinion?
If you look at retention numbers, we can focus on that for a second. Most CPA firms that are operating in kind of a top tier retention bracket, typically they have a formal CX program for one, but they usually are operating within a 90 to 96% retention rate. I think that Pinion right now is hovering around 96%. So we're at the top of the top there, which is great. But when you compare that also against what I had mentioned previously, all of the changes that we have done in the last 5 years, 10 years, you compare those two, I think that's a pretty stellar success story. In terms of value perception, we brought on a whiz pricing strategist, Megan Schottler.
Hmm.
And so we're handling this from all angles and tackling this. And we all work together in conjunction with business development, growth, acquisition, and so forth. It's all about continuing to build that premium brand and getting that across to clients in a humanized way. Yeah.
Do you feel that your clients are more aware of kind of the breadth of offerings that you now have because of the work that you're doing?
That would be a better question for the true marketers on staff. But yeah, we have a heavy presence out in the community, whether it's trade shows or conferences. We are getting our name out there consistently and letting folks know all of the things that we offer. I think that that's a never ending battle. I think that when you go through a rebrand and a restructure, there are some individuals, some clients that you're going to have to spend a long time regaining the trust that were clients for 40 years with Keiko or so forth. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, no, it does. The For firms that are just starting out on their journey, Joe, what is the one thing? It doesn't, I'm saying one, it could be, give me as many as you like, but what is the one thing that you tell them not to skip? And if they do skip this step, why is that going to hurt so much?
the hard truth, and this has come from conversations for years with firms that are just getting started, even big billion-dollar firms that are now at a place where they feel that this needs to happen. That kind of that genesis, that catalyst moment where we are ready for a formal CX situation. Oftentimes, I think what happens is leadership goes to the CRM admin or the marketing manager or the client success leader, and they say, congrats, you're the CX person now, but you've got this hat and we need you to figure out this one also.
Mhm.
And they go, great, let's run with that. I'd love to get that off the ground. And then they're confronted with what's involved in terms of budget and expenditure, in terms of manpower and bandwidth, in terms of what a formal stood up CX program looks like, and the blood drops out of their face. And so the short answer and the hard answer is, if this is something that you're going to do, don't tiptoe into it. Bring on a dedicated CX personnel, director, manager, hit it with the budget power that's necessary to get that off the ground in 24 months. What you risk by not doing that is a timeline stretch from 24 months to 4 years to 5 years to 6 years. And the problem with that, not to say that it's wrong or right, but what you risk is it loses some immediacy, it loses some impact, it loses steam, and it can lose that perception in the eyes of the people at the firm that you work with. And what
Mm.
you have now is a subconscious understanding that this isn't important. Something that's taken 6 years to be stood up. Obviously, this is a side shelf issue. We touch on it when we need to. So timelines are important. And to stand this up, then maintain and operate within the space, the projects that you've implemented, it's really a Monday through Friday situation for somebody. So where I see firms losing steam is somebody's gung ho on this, and then just the simple element of getting a feedback strategy or a survey strategy and proper reporting out, just that one element's enough to stop people in their tracks and go, and I have a whole marketing department to run or a business development team or what have you. So I think that's where these things tend to fall short. Some of that comes from buy-in from leadership where they ixnay a budgetary request because they're not fully bought into the value. But anybody starting this journey, make the business case for it, allocate the personnel, allocate the budget, and if done correctly, you will make that expenditure back within a couple of years, for sure.
Yeah, that's CX at Pinion. Does that sit within marketing today, Joe?
I'm under the marketing umbrella, and I always, when people ask, people that have never heard the term before, colleagues and whatnot, what is CX? And I say, you think of traditional marketing, they're responsible for bringing new clients in. I'm the other side of marketing. I'm there to make sure that we keep the clients that we want to keep. So we all fall under that umbrella. It's technically marketing opinion for sure.
And how are you staying? You talked about you go full in, you launch a program, and you don't want it to die with a whimper, right? You want
Right.
it to continue. So how do you keep showing the value so that investment continues?
I think there's different ways to do that. You show the business case for it and the why, right? This is the
Right.
intended outcome for if you're speaking to somebody in the innovation team or on the audit team or what have you. This is how this is intended to look. This is the intended result of this thing. And then I think a lot of that has to do with gaining that trust in those relationships. If you're brought on board or you're starting your journey as a CX professional within a firm, you have to make it an intention to get around as much as you can, touch as many people as you can, sit in as many meetings as you can, learn. We have a standard in our accord, and it's understand your client's market, business, and culture as if you're a part of it. You have to live that. You have to understand what everybody is doing so that you can bring the right resources together to get some of these initiatives off the ground. I think the biggest motivator for people who may be on the fence for any sort of CX project is just being in a room and seeing how many people are collaborating on something. Man, if you've got 5, 6, 7 different individuals from disparate areas of the firm putting their heads together to think on this thing called CX, you'll win hearts and minds every time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that extract from the Accord that you mentioned, being in your, not just in your customer shoes, but having that sort of outsider mentality and understanding that customer deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you need to know them and talk to them and communicate and get their feedback. The Is there something maybe unique or different that you're doing at your firm, Joe, compared to others, you feel?
That's tough. I'm not
Yeah.
involved in other firms' CX programs, but what I think is unique to us is the level to which empathy is baked into everything that we do, putting yourself in another's shoes, whether that's your colleague. And a lot of what we do is really EX considered. It's EX adjacent. We want all of our practices and anything that we've implemented to be a win-win for the client and our employees, right? And our colleagues at work. So it's EX driven, it's empathy baked. I think that Jen and I have spent a lot of time considering the specific individual characteristics of all of the markets that we serve, all of our functional areas, even in terms of how we conduct our survey campaigns. For our ag clients, we ensure that those don't fall within planting or harvest season. That's a good example there. And so it's a lot to consider, but we want to make sure that it's not a one size fits one. We do want to make sure it's a one size fits one so that all of the areas that we serve within the firm feel like they have a sort of a curated experience with us because they're our clients, right? So I think that sets us apart. I would hope that everybody's operating that way, though.
That personalization, that
Right.
localization is not always there. And so it's great to hear that you're doing that. And that goes back to what you were talking about in the Accord as well, about
Mhm.
really understanding your customer and their needs and how they operate as a business. When
Yeah.
you think about looking ahead, and maybe it's not 3 to 5 years, that might be a little unfair, but maybe over the next couple of years, Joe, what's the vision for your firm's customer experience and what are you looking to achieve and build on in the next few years?
5 is tough. We can get
Hmm.
closer to 3.
Yep.
I would love for us, and I think that we will be close to accomplishing that in the next couple of years, get a fully automated clockwork feedback strategy with a lot of great year-over-year data to take a look at, potential team growth down the road, and then developing what's called a journey map and service blueprint atlas. I want a full map of every rock that we've flipped. In the next couple of years, I'd like to look back and say we've touched and flipped all of these rocks to see what's under them. So at least at some point in the next 24 months, we can say we've looked at all the nooks and crannies of the firm. We've determined health parameters there, what's going well, what our clients like, what isn't going well, and we've addressed those things. That's the final phase for the stand up for us. All of the bread and butter items are there, they're functioning. We're getting good reporting and good feedback in and out on those items. And the final part is that process improvement area. And I always suggest to people, do it even if it doesn't need to be done. If you have a high functioning service, feedback and scoring is great on that line of service. Maybe it's less involved, but still take a look at how you can improve the EX function within that team. So that's my goal in the next 2 to 3 years, but we'll see.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And what when you talk about journey based,
Hmm.
maybe you could break that down a little bit for our listener.
Sure. So, especially if you're operating at a firm that does many things, many areas of expertise, the client's journey is different. Their experience with those teams is different. So, when you're conducting a client journey map, you're taking them from beginning to end, from the time that they are aware of Pinion. And so you assess those marketing channels, you assess referral strategies and things like that, all the way to the end of a project where it's potentially a renewal conversation or continued relationship conversation. And it's really just putting that under a microscope, figuring out all the touch points, both internal and external, that a client has, identifying pain points based on survey data, based on input from those teams, internal, external facing, and then taking a look at those and prioritizing those snags and pain points. So it's a process improvement strategy, but it's the benefit in that always is getting those people together in a room who probably have never had a conversation with that many facets of individuals to think on this one thing. I think that the benefit there, regardless of the process improvement outcomes, is that you got a bunch of individuals in there that are passionate about what they do to take a look at this and go, where could we do better?
And you also start understanding the impact that you have beyond your function as well,
Hmm.
which I think is critical when you're
Yes.
thinking about CX holistically too. But I love the way you broke that down, Joe. That's
Thanks.
welcome. The before we wrap up, Joe, I know we've covered a lot of ground, but is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you feel is important to let people know?
Don't be scared of it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be intimidated. Earlier, I probably didn't help make the case for that when I said, "Oh, you have to do all these things." Take it one bite at a time. There's a ton of people out there, including myself, that would happily be a resource for anybody that has questions. But if you feel and if you're hesitant to approach leadership and you're thinking that this is something you need from a marketing manager perspective, or what have you, there's resources for having that conversation and making that business case out there for you as well. So if it's time and you know it's time and you're a leader at a firm and you feel in your heart that it's time to get this formalized and get this stood up, then go for it.
Awesome. Joe, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for the great insights and looking forward to speak again. So thank you for being on the podcast today, Joe.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.